I want to start off just taking if you take like a 30,000 foot view of this season from how we started to how we finished, the big transitions that we went through, the responses from our players and our coaching staff to how we competed in this series, to, in the play-in with Miami to Boston, I just couldn't be more proud of how they showed up professional. It got better. We always talked about how do we become the best version of ourselves for whatever that means in whatever landscape in the context that we're in. I think we did that, and I think it gives a lot of hope for the future. And what it does is it really allows us to reflect on where we've been and where we're at right now. And I'm very proud of this group. Very proud.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of the guys have bought into what Quinn Snyder has been bringing, and they've all said that they've noticed a cultural shift between the two, I guess you could say, halves, even though they're not really fully halves. What does that mean with Quinn and how much he's been able to kind of have an imprint on these guys in such a short amount of time?
It speaks volumes of Quinn. I think it speaks to what we identified early in him and why we thought he was going to be the right coach for the job. And just watching him work day in and day out, the rapport he has with players, the level of respect, the level of detail that they all respect, the ability to engage and not just be in a supportive sense, but also in a challenge without guys shutting down is very difficult to navigate in this league, and he's done that. And it's been fun to see. Like it really makes it a good working environment and a real collaborative effort for all of us moving forward.
And of course, you guys have a lot of work to do as far as maybe evaluations on how you move this roster forward to the championship team that you want it to be. I guess where do you start with those evaluations and moving ahead?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to get there. We really are. I mean, like, the craziest thing about sports is season abruptly ends, not even 16 hours ago. And so I think sitting in that space, right, where beforehand just looking at the way in which they showed up, and there was life in that series, and you're giving Boston something to think about, which is a very good team. Is where our focus is at. It's like, okay, like if that's sort of the floor, where can the ceiling go? And we'll sit together as a front office and with Quinn and the coaches and just figure out, okay, well, this is what we need to do to take the next step.
When you get a full season, as opposed to a season like this one where there's changes in administration, change of coach, change of some of the players, how is life different for everybody, and what changes when you kind of get a fresh start and go from the beginning of the season to the end with some continuity?
I mean, I really think it's going to be very beneficial for us, and being able to go into the summertime and start to really inject more and more of what's already been placed before us with Quinn, a new system and a new set of standards and new absolutes, just from a cultural standpoint, has been good early, but then now going into next season where that's sort of set is going to be really beneficial. So guys walk in knowing, okay, this is what we're about. We've cut out some of the things that we needed to cut out. So now we can really direct our eyes on where we need to get to this next season. So I anticipate all the guys will come back, ready and willing to take the next step, because we'll define what that road's going to look like.
How do you balance not necessarily looking at just this series in a vacuum with how well the team played and went toe-to-toe with Boston versus your larger vision from the season, from Quinn's 20, 30 games? How do you kind of balance that as you go into the offseason?
Well, it was good to have a reference point, before Quinn came, and seeing kind of where we were at, and understanding that there's still components of that you do have to take into account. You do have to balance that out, but then you also see the progression that guys make, and you're somewhere in between at that point. But it's been very hopeful. Like that's where I don't sit up here and say we've arrived, but I also know we're not where we were. Regardless of the record, like we are a different team. You could see it in the guys' faces. You could see it in how they approach practices day in and day out. The intentionality behind Quinn and the system, the culture that he's cultivating more and more of, is very exciting. But you still have to understand, like, yeah, we haven't arrived. We got plenty of places to go, but we do want to celebrate how far we've come.
Landry, how do you evaluate, and I really mean this more full season because Boston is so tough, how do you evaluate what you guys were able to do defensively this season and where you want that to grow for next season?
Well, you do it by I'm watching a lot of film for sure, but you do it where you bring in the absolutes, and that's something that we've talked about a lot, what Quinn talks about a lot. Like, in order to have an identity, you have to have something that you do time and time and time again, and that rhythm and those predictable patterns are ultimately going to bring out a defensive identity, let's say. And so when you define those, then it gives you that evaluation. You have something where you can see and know, like, okay, that is or that is not what that looks like or what we want it to look like. And then you just keep hammering it out. Like, it's really, I mean, that's simplified, it's just reps. It's saying this is what we do, how we do it, and then just continuously practicing over and over again. And you got to give it time too. You know, to expect perfection is a fallacy. You know, really, it's about expecting progression and showing up every day to hammer that out.
Well, I don't expect you to tell us, you know, what your plans are with trades or anything like that. John is a name that consistently comes up in kind of those rumors. I mean, what is your vision for him, and how do you see him potentially fitting on this roster moving forward?
I think it's the same that I've spoken about just in the past. Yeah, John's name, it comes up a lot, and he's a good player.
Yeah.
Like, it should. Like, a lot of teams value him, and we have a lot of value in him. We're just not quite there yet on how we're going to piecemeal this together. We do have to take some time to celebrate, but then also to look back and figure out, okay, what are the next steps? Like, what is the pathway with the particular group and the particular system that we're implementing in order for us to take that next step? But we need to take time in order to reflect on that as a group.
How valuable is it for your staff, the coaching staff, to have seen the fan reaction from Trey's game winner in Game 5 and the atmosphere last night when you're trying to convince people to come, convince people to stay within the organization? How valuable is just the atmosphere that the fans created last night?
Oh, it was extremely valuable. It really, and what our business side has been able to do and how they've been able to partner with us on this journey, like, that's a huge credit to them. You know, like, we have to have the right players in place, and we want to have a winning culture, and we want to have something that's it's the word I'm looking for here. It's appealing, I guess, to the general crowd and the fans, but at the same time, like, they do a good job as well. And to have players such as Trey do what he did in Boston gives you that spark, that life, that just that thing about sports that everybody loves and that gravitate towards. You find that in very special players, and I know that's very attractive for a lot of fans. But to have them show up as they did and be loud as they did, I think it felt like a true home court advantage. Wish we could have got a different outcome, but we're going to need more of that, and that'll be good for us.
Do you have a plan or a gut feeling for what you want in Summer League and/or maybe which roster players you want to see in that environment?
Yeah, well, I mean, some of our younger guys, I think, are obvious to play, and when we take time, we're going to lay out development pathways for every single player. It's going to be customized to who they are as players and how we want them to fit into this system. And then Summer League is just going to be a great feedback loop for them to go try to practice it more and more in, like, real life game situations. And it gives us that proper mirror to see, like, okay, like, this is how they're progressing, and then go from there. But yeah, I'd imagine a lot of our younger guys, and we've spoken with a few of them about it already. But that's also a team that we're going to have to strategically place together, because there's a lot of stuff we want to accomplish in Summer League this year.
With DeJounte, I mean, in this upcoming year, I believe this is like the last year of his contract next year. I mean, how do you prioritize, I guess, how you have those conversations with him and his agent, his team, about getting him what he feels he deserves?
Well, just in the question, I mean, he's not the type that comes and says, "Oh, I deserve this, that, and third." It's a day by day thing, but it's also him just, like, we haven't even had those talks. Like, those will come in time as the season progresses and as we look at this roster and how it's shaping up and whatnot. But it's just not an area that we've touched on yet, and I'm sure we'll get there. We'll get there.
How did you see Trey and DJ's relationship, or just dynamic on the court, evolve throughout the season to where it was for the series against Boston?
Yeah, so I was on record by saying at first it's to be expected that it might look a little clunky. You're asking two primary ball handlers to now share a backcourt with each other, but two very talented playmaking ball handlers. And it's had its ups, it's had its downs. To be honest, I think that we've all seen that where it looks a little clunky, but there's also times where it's been beautiful to watch. They play for each other, they play within the game flow, and you just see how talented they are as a group. Where it's like, well, if that guy's not doing it tonight, that other guy sure is, and it becomes a nightmare for the defense. And so it's still working in a complementary sense, but I think we got a great taste of it last month here. I think Quinn has been able to figure out a great way for those two to coexist in a way that is going to enhance our group. But Trae Young and DeJounte Murray as your backcourt, that's a fun backcourt.
Trey spoke about the high basketball IQ of Quinn and how meaningful that is to him and helpful that is to him. Has there been a moment where Quinn has wowed you, or he's shown something really insightful to you and you've been like, wow?
Oh, of course, yeah. I think that for Trey has such a high IQ himself. To be able to have that connection with somebody else, he greatly respects, and I think it's showing him some new things on how it can enhance his game. It's great because you look at a guy like Trey, like, wow, he's really good. Like, everyone's like, okay, well, he can get better here, but what about some of these nuances that not a lot of people can achieve? But Quinn can see that, and he can speak that into his life, into his development. And for Trey to have those aha moments is great. So yeah, of course, from my standpoint, like, you're always learning, and that's what you always want to do, and to have a mind like Quinn to be able to share the same space with talking about basketball, yeah, you're going to learn a few things for sure.
Maybe this is a weird question, but basketball has an evolution. It changes over decades, years, and it seems like maybe it changes faster and faster as time goes on. If you look at the NBA in 2023, even compared to just like last year, rules change, players change, tactics change. Is there one thing that you're like, wow, this really changed a lot in a short period of time?
I think that one of the most underrated rule changes to happen specifically for us was actually the foul calling, and how Trey during that Eastern Conference Finals run was able to really take advantage of that. When they changed that rule, it forced him to become different. Not completely different, but it is something where he had to reinvent himself a little bit. And so I look back to that instance and go like, yeah, that was a significant change. Because you think about the game flow, right? If you're able to draw those fouls, you get in the bonus earlier, shooting more free throws, points go up, you get guys in foul trouble, the game flow stops, guys are able to rest, able to set your defense. There's a number of things that impacted, that were contextually really important for our group, not just for Trey, but just like, especially on the defensive end as well. So that was significant for sure. And as the league goes along and they make the changes that they do, and that's good for the game, players will adjust, coaches will adjust, and we have enough bright minds to think strategically on how we can best take advantage